What if the deepest fear you carry is built upon a misunderstanding of who you are? Perhaps you have wondered what happens when the body grows tired, when the breath becomes still, or when someone you love is no longer physically beside you. Perhaps these thoughts arrive late at night, when the world is quiet and the mind begins asking questions it cannot easily answer. Is death the end? Does the soul continue? Is God somewhere beyond this life, waiting in a place you cannot yet see? These questions are not signs that something is wrong with you. They are part of being human. Beneath the noise of daily life, beneath the appointments, responsibilities, conversations, and worries, there is often a quiet longing to understand what all of this means. You may have spent years building an identity around your name, your body, your work, your relationships, your memories, and the roles you play for other people. You may be a parent, a partner, a friend, a caregiver, or someone others depend upon. These roles can be meaningful, but they are not the whole of you. There is something within you that has been present through every stage of your life. Your body has changed. Your beliefs have changed. Your relationships have changed. Even the thoughts you once considered permanent have come and gone, yet something has quietly witnessed every change. There was an awareness within you when you were a child. That same awareness was present when you felt joy, when you experienced rejection, when you made mistakes, and when you began again. It was there before you knew what other people expected from you. It was there before you learned to compare yourself, protect yourself, or seek approval. You might call this awareness the soul. You might call it consciousness, spirit, presence, or the divine spark within. The name is less important than the experience of recognizing that you are more than the changing story of your life. The body is part of your journey, but perhaps it is not the full definition of who you are. Imagine standing beside a river. The water is always moving. No moment of the river is exactly the same as the moment before it. Leaves pass, reflections appear and disappear. The sunlight changes across the surface, yet the river remains the river. Your life may be similar. Experiences move through you. Emotions rise and fall. People enter and leave. Seasons begin and end. The outer form changes, but the deeper presence within you remains. Much of the fear surrounding death comes from identifying only with what changes. When you believe you are only the body, the personality, or the collection of memories you have gathered, the idea of losing them can feel unbearable. The mind wants to hold on because it does not know how to imagine existence beyond what it can see and touch. But the soul does not speak through fear. It speaks through stillness. It does not argue with the mind. It simply waits beneath the noise, like the sky behind passing clouds. You may have felt this presence during an unexpected moment of peace. Perhaps you were walking beneath the trees and suddenly felt that life was larger than your problems. Perhaps you were holding the hand of someone you loved and sensed a connection that words could not explain. Perhaps you sat in silence after a painful loss and, even through your grief, felt that love had not completely disappeared. These moments can be easy to dismiss. The mind may call them imagination or emotion. Yet they often reveal something the intellect cannot fully contain. Love feels deeper than the physical form through which it is expressed. When someone you love dies, the absence of their body is real. The empty chair is real. The silence where their voice once lived is real. Spiritual reflection should never ask you to pretend that loss does not hurt. Grief deserves tenderness. Tears are not a failure of faith. They are often love searching for a new way to move. And yet, even in grief, you may begin to notice that the love you shared has not vanished. It remains in the way you speak, in the kindness they taught you, in the memories that return without warning, and in the quiet changes their life created within yours. The physical presence has changed, but the love continues to move. Perhaps this is one of the first invitations death gives us, to consider that what is most real may not always be visible. The ego has difficulty with this, because the ego trusts appearances. It says, I can only believe what I can prove. It wants certainty, control, and clear answers. But the deepest parts of life rarely arrive through certainty. Love cannot be weighed. Peace cannot be held in your hands. The soul cannot be photographed. Yet you know when love is present. You know when peace touches you. You know when something within you feels connected to a reality larger than fear. God, too, may have been presented to you as something distant. Perhaps you were taught to imagine God as a being far away, watching and judging from beyond the world. That image may have brought comfort, or it may have created anxiety. But there is another way to reflect upon God. Perhaps God is not only somewhere you go after death. Perhaps God is the source of life moving through you now. The same intelligence that opens a flower, guides the seasons, and carries the ocean toward the shore may also be breathing through you. You do not have to force your heart to beat. You do not have to remind your body how to heal a small wound. Life is already happening within you through a wisdom far deeper than conscious thought. What if the soul is not separate from that wisdom? What if you are not a lonely being trying to find God, but an expression of God slowly remembering where you came from? This does not require you to accept a fixed belief. It is simply an invitation to become curious, to sit quietly with the possibility that your true identity was never limited to your body, your age, your past, or the opinions of others. You may not need to solve the mystery of death today. You may only need to question the assumption that death can destroy what you truly are. And as you begin to question that assumption, another question gently appears. If the soul cannot be separated from its source, what exactly is the part of you that is so afraid? The part of you that is afraid is not wrong. It is simply the part of you that has learned to survive by holding tightly to what it knows. The ego is often misunderstood. It is not an enemy that must be destroyed. It is a structure of thought that helps you move through the physical world. It remembers your name, protects your boundaries, organizes your experiences, and helps you recognize yourself as an individual. But when the ego becomes the only voice you trust, it begins to confuse your temporary identity with your eternal nature. It says, I am my body. I am my history. I am what others think of me. I am what I own. I am the roles I perform. I am the wounds I have carried. And because all of these things can change, the ego lives with a quiet fear of losing control. You can see this fear in ordinary moments. Someone does not return your message, and your mind immediately creates a story. Perhaps they are angry. Perhaps you said something wrong. Perhaps you are no longer important to them. The situation itself is simple, but the ego turns uncertainty into suffering because it wants to know where it stands. Or perhaps you look in the mirror and notice signs of aging. A new line appears. Your hair changes. Your body no longer moves with the same ease it once did. The ego may whisper that something valuable is being taken from you. It may compare the person you are now with the person you used to be and insist that youth was closer to life while aging is closer to loss. Yet the awareness looking into the mirror has no age. The reflection changes, but the one observing the reflection remains quietly present. This is not an invitation to deny the body or ignore the emotions that come with change. It is an invitation to notice that you are the observer of those emotions. You are aware of the fear, which means there is something within you that is deeper than the fear itself. When you say, I am afraid, you often merge your identity with the feeling. But when you gently say, I notice fear moving through me, a small space begins to open. In that space, you are no longer trapped inside the emotion. You become the awareness holding it. Awareness does not force fear to leave. It simply allows you to see fear without becoming fear. This is one of the quiet paths to freedom. Imagine a cloud moving across the sky. The cloud may be dark and heavy. It may cover the sunlight for a while, but the sky is not harmed by the cloud. The sky does not struggle to remove it. It gives the cloud room to pass. Your thoughts are like those clouds. Some are bright and gentle. Others carry worry, grief, anger, and uncertainty. The ego often believes each thought must be followed, solved, or defended. But the deeper self can allow thoughts to move without surrendering its peace to every passing shadow. This becomes especially important when you think about death. The mind may ask questions that have no immediate answer. What will happen? Will I still know the people I love? Will I be conscious? Will I disappear? Is there something beyond this world? There is nothing wrong with these questions. But notice what happens when the ego demands certainty. It searches endlessly. It collects beliefs, arguments, and explanations. Yet even when it finds an answer, another doubt appears. The ego cannot be fully satisfied by certainty because its deepest concern is not information. Its deepest concern is control. It wants a guarantee that nothing will be lost. It wants life to follow a predictable path. It wants people to stay, the body to remain strong, and the future to unfold according to its plans. But life has never promised to obey the ego. A river does not stop flowing because a leaf is afraid of where the current may carry it. The seasons do not pause because a tree wants to keep its leaves. Life moves, changes, releases, and renews itself. When you resist this movement, suffering grows. When you begin to trust it, peace becomes possible. Trust does not mean you never feel afraid. It means fear no longer becomes the ruler of your inner world. You may recognize how the need for control appears in relationships. Perhaps you try to keep everyone happy because you fear rejection. You say yes when your heart wants to say no. You hide your feelings to avoid conflict. You carry responsibilities that do not belong to you because being needed makes you feel safe. People-pleasing can appear loving, but beneath it, there is often fear. The ego says, if they approve of me, I will be secure. If they stay pleased with me, I will not be abandoned. But love that is built on fear becomes exhausting. It requires constant performance. The soul does not ask you to perform for love. It reminds you that love is your nature. When you remember this, you can care for others without disappearing inside their expectations. You can be kind without betraying yourself. You can listen without carrying every burden. You can allow people to have their opinions without making those opinions the measure of your worth. The ego seeks love through approval. The soul expresses love through presence. This distinction can change the way you live. You may also notice the ego through comparison. You look at someone else's life and imagine they have found something you are missing. Their relationship appears happier. Their body looks younger. Their purpose seems clearer. Their faith seems stronger. Their grief seems easier to carry. Comparison tells you that peace exists somewhere outside you, in another life, another body, another set of circumstances. But the moment you compare, you leave the truth of your own experience. A rose does not compare itself with the tree beside it. The ocean does not envy the mountain. Each expression of life follows its own nature. You are not here to become another person's version of peace. You are here to remember the peace already beneath your need to compare. The ego says, I will be whole when I become more like them. The soul quietly replies, you were never incomplete. This does not mean there is nothing to learn or change. Growth is natural, healing is natural, but transformation born from self-rejection creates more inner conflict. Transformation born from awareness feels different. It does not begin with the belief that you are broken. It begins with the recognition that you have forgotten who you are. You are not becoming worthy. You are releasing the thoughts that told you otherwise. The fear of death is connected to many smaller fears that appear throughout life. The fear of losing status, the fear of losing beauty, the fear of losing a relationship, the fear of losing a familiar identity. Each one carries the same hidden question: who will I be without this? Perhaps you have lost a role that once defined you. A relationship ended, a career changed, your children grew older and needed you differently. An illness altered the way you moved through the world. Suddenly, the identity you relied upon was no longer available. At first, such change can feel like a small death. The old version of you cannot continue in the same way. The ego grieves because it believes that without the familiar role, nothing remains. But sometimes what remains is closer to your true self than what was lost. When the noise of identity becomes quiet, you may begin to hear a deeper question. Not what do I do, or how do others see me, but what is still here when the role disappears. There is still awareness, there is still presence, there is still the capacity to love, there is still the mysterious life within you. The outer identity may have changed, but the soul has not been diminished. This is why moments of loss, painful as they are, can sometimes open a spiritual doorway. They remove what was familiar and invite you to discover what cannot be taken away. Consider the grief of losing someone you love. The ego may resist reality by replaying the past. It may say, this should not have happened. I cannot accept this. Life will never be whole again. These thoughts are understandable. Grief has its own rhythm, and no spiritual idea should be used to rush it. But over time, awareness can begin to hold grief differently. Instead of asking the pain to disappear, you may sit beside it. You may notice that grief and love are intertwined. The depth of the sorrow reveals the depth of the connection. And slowly, a new perspective may arise. The relationship has changed form, but its meaning remains. The person's physical presence is gone, yet the love shared with them continues to influence your choices, your compassion, and the way you see the world. The ego focuses on the absence. The soul remembers the love. Both can be present at the same time. You can miss someone deeply and still sense that the bond was larger than the body. You can cry and still trust. You can feel broken open and still be held by something greater. Spiritual peace does not always feel like happiness. Sometimes peace is simply the willingness to stop arguing with what has already happened. Resistance says, life must be different before I can rest. Acceptance says, this is painful, but I do not have to abandon myself within the pain. Acceptance is not approval. It does not mean that every event is fair or easy to understand. It means you stop spending your life fighting reality in your own mind. When you release the argument, energy returns. The heart begins to soften. The next breath becomes possible. The ego also creates suffering through resentment. It holds tightly to what others have done, believing that pain must be remembered in order to remain protected. It says, if I forgive, they will escape responsibility. If I let go, what happened will become acceptable. But resentment does not keep the past accountable. It keeps the past alive within you. You may carry someone's hurtful words for years. They may have spoken them in a moment and forgotten them, while you continue repeating them in your mind. Each repetition allows the wound to happen again. Awareness invites you to notice this without judgment. It asks, is this thought protecting me now, or is it keeping me tied to what I want to be free from? The answer may not come immediately. Forgiveness is rarely a single decision. It can be a gradual release, like a fist opening one finger at a time. And forgiveness does not require you to return to harmful situations. You can forgive and create distance. You can release resentment and maintain boundaries. You can wish another person peace without giving them access to your life. Forgiveness is not surrendering your dignity. It is reclaiming your inner space. The ego says, I will be free when they understand what they did. The soul says, you can be free even if they never understand. As awareness deepens, you begin to see that the ego is always protecting an image. It protects the image of being right, being admired, being in control, being safe, or being permanent. But images require effort. Truth does not. Your true self does not need to win every argument. It does not need to be seen by everyone. It does not need to prove its value. It rests in a deeper belonging. Perhaps this is why silence can feel uncomfortable at first. In silence, there is nothing to perform, no one to impress, no problem to solve. The ego loses its usual activity, and what remains may feel unfamiliar. Yet if you stay for a few moments, the silence begins to change. It no longer feels empty. It feels alive. You may notice your breath. You may hear sounds you had ignored. You may feel the simple fact of being here without needing to explain yourself. This presence is not dramatic. It does not announce itself. It has been with you all along. And in that presence, the fear of death can begin to soften because you are no longer placing your entire identity in the things that time can change. You begin to recognize that the one observing the body is deeper than the body. The one noticing the thoughts is deeper than the thoughts. The one witnessing the roles is deeper than the roles. The ego may still ask for certainty. It may still fear the unknown. But now another voice is becoming clearer. It is quieter than fear, yet more enduring. It does not promise that life will remain unchanged. It reminds you that the source within you is present through every change. And when you begin to trust that presence, you are ready to ask a different question. Not, how can I prevent life from taking anything away? But how can I live with an open heart while I am here? How can you live with an open heart while you are here? Perhaps the answer begins by releasing the belief that an open heart is a vulnerable heart. The ego often teaches you that love must be guarded, measured, and earned. It remembers every disappointment and uses the past as evidence that closeness is dangerous. It says, do not trust too much, do not forgive too quickly, do not care so deeply that someone can hurt you again. This protection may feel wise, but over time it can become a prison. The walls built to keep pain out also keep love from moving freely through you. Your true self does not ask you to become careless. It asks you to become conscious. You can love without abandoning your boundaries. You can remain compassionate without accepting mistreatment. You can keep your heart open while also listening to the quiet wisdom that tells you when to stay and when to step away. An open heart is not a heart without discernment. It is a heart that refuses to let fear become its permanent home. Perhaps someone once betrayed your trust. You offered sincerity. and they responded with dishonesty. You tried to understand them, but they continued to wound you. Afterward, you may have promised yourself that no one would ever get that close again. At first, this promise may have given you a sense of control, but as time passed, you may have noticed that the person who hurt you was no longer present, while the fear they created continued shaping your relationships. You became cautious when someone was kind. You questioned love when it arrived. You searched for hidden motives because disappointment felt more familiar than safety. The past was gone, but its shadow remained. Awareness gives you another possibility. Instead of asking, how do I make sure I am never hurt again? You may begin asking, how do I remain connected to myself, whatever another person chooses? This question returns your power to you. You cannot control whether others are honest, loyal, or emotionally available, but you can remain present with your own truth. You can notice when fear is speaking. You can honor what you feel. You can stop confusing another person's behavior with your worth. The ego wants to control the world so that the heart will feel safe. The soul discovers safety through its connection to the source. When you know that love is not something another person gives you or takes from you, relationships begin to change. You no longer enter them begging to be completed. You enter them with something to share. You may still feel disappointment. You may still experience loss, but you are less likely to disappear inside another person's choices. This is the deeper meaning of surrender. Surrender does not mean becoming passive. It does not mean giving up your ability to choose. It means releasing the exhausting attempt to control what was never yours to control. Imagine standing in a river and trying to stop the current with your hands. The harder you push, the more tired you become. The river continues moving, not because it is against you, but because movement is its nature. Life is also moving. People change. Bodies age. Plans unfold differently than expected. Some doors open, while others close without explanation. The ego interprets these changes personally. It says, life is denying me. God has forgotten me. I must force something to happen. Surrender offers a gentler perspective. It says, perhaps I do not see the whole river from where I am standing. You may remember a time when something you desperately wanted did not happen. A relationship ended. An opportunity disappeared. A plan failed. In the moment, it may have felt as though life had taken the wrong path. Years later, you may have seen that the closed door redirected you toward a truth you would never have chosen voluntarily. The pain was not pleasant, but it opened space. It revealed strength, wisdom, or compassion that had been hidden beneath your expectations. This does not mean every loss must be explained or turned into a lesson. Some experiences remain mysterious, but trust allows you to live without demanding that every mystery be solved before you can feel peace. Trust is the willingness to take the next step without seeing the entire road. A seed beneath the soil does not know what the garden will look like. It does not wait for proof of the sun before it begins to open. Something within it responds to an invisible intelligence. There may be a similar intelligence within you. When you become still, you may feel an inner movement that does not come from fear. It does not shout. It does not pressure you. It may simply feel like a quiet knowing that it is time to forgive, to rest, to speak honestly, to release a relationship, or to begin again. This is where intention becomes spiritual rather than controlling. The ego uses intention to demand outcomes. It says, I will focus hard enough to make life give me what I want. The soul uses intention to choose the quality of energy it brings into each moment. It says, whatever happens today, I intend to meet it with awareness. I intend to return to love. I intend not to abandon my peace for every fearful thought. You may not be able to control the events of the day, but you can choose the consciousness from which you meet them. Suppose you wake with anxiety. Before your feet touch the floor, the mind begins listing problems. There are conversations you are avoiding, decisions you do not know how to make, and responsibilities that already feel heavy. The ego says you must solve everything now. But perhaps you pause. You feel the breath entering and leaving your body. You place your attention on the present moment and quietly remember, I do not have to carry the entire future in this one breath. Nothing outside has changed, yet your relationship with the moment has changed. From that calmer space, you may still make the phone call, face the uncertainty, or take the necessary action, but now you are responding rather than reacting. This is alignment with life. It is not the absence of difficulty. It is the absence of unnecessary inner resistance. You begin to cooperate with the present instead of constantly arguing with it. Forgiveness becomes part of this cooperation. Perhaps there is someone you have struggled to forgive. Each time their name appears, your body tightens. You may have imagined conversations in which they finally admit the harm they caused. You may have waited for an apology, believing that peace could begin only after they understood your pain. But what happens when the apology never comes? Does your freedom have to remain in their hands? Forgiveness invites you to take it back. You might begin by acknowledging exactly what happened. You do not minimize it. You do not pretend it was harmless. You simply stop asking the past to become different. Then you notice the burden of carrying the story every day. You notice how resentment enters new relationships, colors new experiences, and keeps your attention tied to someone who may no longer be part of your life. Slowly, you may become willing to release the emotional debt, not because the other person deserves your approval, but because you deserve peace. Forgiveness is sometimes less like opening a door and more like putting down a stone. You may have carried it so long that the weight feels normal. When you finally release it, your hands may feel strangely empty. That emptiness is not weakness, it is space. Space for new thoughts, space for compassion, space for the life that has been waiting beneath the grievance. The person you may need to forgive most deeply is often yourself. You may still judge choices you made when you were younger, frightened, or unaware. You look back with the wisdom you have now and condemn the person you were then for not knowing what you know today. But that earlier version of you was trying to find love, safety, or belonging with the understanding available at the time. Self-forgiveness does not erase responsibility. It allows responsibility to become healing rather than punishment. You can acknowledge where you caused pain. You can make amends where possible. You can choose differently now. But you do not have to keep reopening the wound to prove that you regret it. A garden does not punish the seed for the season in which it could not grow. It receives new light, new water, and another opportunity. Perhaps you can offer yourself the same mercy. When you forgive yourself, you begin to understand that your mistakes were never your deepest identity. They were experiences within your life, not the essence of your soul. The soul remains beneath every mistake, waiting to be remembered. This remembrance changes the way you think about God. You may have imagined God as keeping a record of every failure, waiting to decide whether you are worthy of love. But what if divine love is not something you earn through perfection? What if it is the very life moving through you, even when you forget its presence? The sun does not withhold light from a tree because one branch is broken. The ocean does not reject a wave because it rises differently from the others. Perhaps the source does not love you because you have become flawless. Perhaps love is what you were made from. When you begin to sense this, the fear of death changes again. If the source is within you now, why would physical death create separation from it? The wave may return to the ocean, but it was never made of anything other than the ocean. Your body gives your soul a temporary form. Through this form, you touch, speak, grieve, laugh, learn, and love. The form is precious because it is temporary. But the life within the form may belong to something timeless. You do not have to fully understand this to be comforted by it. A child resting in loving arms does not need to understand the path home. The child trusts the presence holding them. Perhaps spiritual trust is similar. You may not know what lies beyond the visible world, but you can begin to feel that you are held by the same intelligence that brought you into life. And if death is not the end of your deepest identity, then life no longer has to be lived in constant fear of losing everything. You can become more present. You can say the words you have delayed. You can express love while there is still time to express it in this form. You can forgive before resentment hardens. You can stop postponing peace until every problem is solved. You begin to see that purpose may not be a grand role you are supposed to discover. Purpose may be the quality of consciousness you bring to ordinary moments. It is present when you listen without preparing your reply. It is present when you choose kindness over the need to be right. It is present when you sit beside someone who is grieving and do not try to fix their sorrow. It is present when you treat your own tired heart with gentleness. The ego asks, what must I achieve before my life has meaning? The soul asks, how much love can I allow through this moment? This love does not need to be dramatic. It may look like patience with an aging parent, forgiveness toward a partner, compassion for a stranger, or silence instead of a hurtful response. Each small act becomes a return to the source. And as you return, you may discover that inner transformation is not the creation of a new self. It is the release of everything that covered the self already present. Fear covered it. Resentment covered it. Comparison covered it. The need to control covered it. But beneath these layers, the quiet awareness has remained untouched. You are not trying to become divine. You are remembering the divine life already breathing through you. This remembrance does not remove every human emotion. You will still have moments of anxiety, grief, and uncertainty, but you will meet them differently. You will know that they are visitors, not your permanent identity. You will allow sadness without becoming hopelessness. You will feel fear without surrendering your direction to it. You will experience change without believing that change has destroyed you. Like the sky, you will remain spacious enough to hold every season. And perhaps, little by little, the question of death will no longer feel like a dark wall at the end of life. It may begin to feel like a doorway within a mystery you do not have to solve, a mystery you can meet with trust, because the same presence that has carried you through every ending, every loss, and every transformation is still here, quietly breathing, quietly loving, quietly guiding you home to the self you never truly left. And so the spiritual journey does not end with finding a perfect answer about death. It begins with learning how to live differently, because you are no longer certain that fear deserves the final word. You may still have questions. You may still wonder what happens when the body completes its journey. You may still feel the ache of someone who is no longer physically beside you. Peace does not require you to erase these questions. It asks only that you hold them with a softer heart. Perhaps you can begin each day by remembering that you are more than the thoughts waiting for you. Before reaching for the world, take one quiet breath. Feel the life moving through your body without your effort. Notice that you are here. Not as a problem to be solved, but as a living expression of something greater than the mind can explain. In this brief stillness, you may silently ask, who am I beneath everything I am carrying? Do not force an answer. Let the question create space. You may discover that beneath the responsibilities, memories, fears, and identities, there is a simple presence. It does not need to compete. It does not need to prove itself. It has no argument with the present moment. This is the self you are remembering. As the day unfolds, notice when the ego begins creating tension. Perhaps someone misunderstands you. Perhaps a plan changes. Perhaps the mind begins comparing your life with another person's life. Instead of judging yourself, become aware. You might quietly say, this is fear asking for protection. That small recognition can interrupt an old pattern. Awareness creates a pause between the event and your response. Inside that pause, you can choose peace without denying what you feel. You may also practice gratitude, not as a way of pretending that everything is easy, but as a way of returning your attention to what is still present. You can be grateful for one breath, one kind conversation, one patch of sunlight, or one memory of someone you loved. Gratitude does not remove grief. It allows grief and love to share the same heart. When resentment returns, as it sometimes will, remember that forgiveness can happen gradually. You do not have to force yourself into feelings that are not yet honest. Begin with willingness. You might say, I am willing to release the part of this pain that no longer serves my healing. That willingness is already movement. You may offer the same compassion to yourself. When regret appears, remember that you are looking backward with awareness you did not always possess. Take responsibility where needed, but do not confuse punishment with transformation. The purpose of awareness is not to make you ashamed of who you were. It is to allow love to guide who you are becoming. And when uncertainty about the future becomes heavy, return to trust. Trust does not mean believing that every event will happen according to your preference. It means remembering that you do not walk through change alone. The source that moves through oceans, forests, seasons, and stars is also present within your breath. You may not know the entire path, but you can meet the next moment. You may not understand every loss, but you can allow love to remain. You may not know exactly what death is, but you can begin to sense that life is larger than physical form. A wave does not become separate from the ocean when it rises. It does not lose its essence when it returns. Its shape changes, but the water remains. Perhaps your journey is like this. For a time, you are given a name, a body, a story, and a place in the lives of others. You experience joy and sorrow. You forget who you are, and then something within you begins to remember. You remember through love. You remember through forgiveness. You remember in moments of silence when the ego has nothing left to defend. And slowly, you understand that spiritual growth is not about escaping your humanity. It is about bringing divine awareness into the human experience. You can honor the body without believing it is your entire identity. You can love people deeply without trying to possess them. You can grieve what changes without believing that love has ended. When death is no longer seen only as destruction, life becomes more precious rather than less. You listen more carefully. You hold people more gently. You become less interested in winning arguments and more interested in leaving peace behind you. You stop waiting for the perfect future before allowing yourself to be present. Perhaps this is the quiet gift hidden within the mystery of death. It reminds you that this moment deserves your attention. This relationship deserves your honesty. This heart deserves your forgiveness. You do not have to wait until the end of life to return to God. You return whenever you choose love over fear. You return whenever you release what you can no longer control. You return whenever you become still enough to recognize that the peace you were searching for was never absent. It was simply covered by noise. And when your own final season arrives, perhaps you will not meet it as a stranger entering darkness, but as a soul returning to a familiar source. Until then, live gently. Forgive where you can. Trust what is deeper than fear. And remember that you are not becoming something eternal. You are remembering the eternal presence that has been with you all along. If this reflection touched something within you, share what you are feeling in the comments. Your words may help another person feel less alone on their own spiritual journey. And subscribe for more quiet conversations about healing, awareness, inner peace, and remembering who you truly are. You are the soul. You are held by the source, and love is still carrying you home.